Okay, we are on after a little bit of an ordeal. I hear a little bit of sound trouble, but apparently we're going to be okay. I'm having a great, well, after our crisis of getting in touch here, video-wise, I'm having a great talk with Mike Vacarro. This is our second video conversation. The first video interview I had with Mike, we were talking about his earlier CD Journeyman, which was an amazing experience, and I shouted to the world that everybody who's a clarinetist should have a look at this CD Journeyman, because there was so much amazing, interesting material on that CD, and it was a whole different framework, multi-track, Mike playing every single woodwind in Greater Hollywood, it seemed like, and then organizing the tracks and all the rest of it. It was fantastic. But this second CD, it's called A Whisper, a Sigh, a Dream. I want to tell you, I told you or hinted at it off camera earlier. I never know what I'm going to get into with you. I'm just always absolutely flabbergasted, and we're going to, I'll put up and make sure everybody knows how to get to your website so they can buy the CD. But this is another CD that has the most incredible repertoire on it I've heard, or should I say heard for the first time. This is all music that is wonderful for clarinetists, for recital programs. A whisper, a sigh, a dream, and what I love more and more about you, Mike, is the way, and I mentioned this earlier, is the way you share your collegiality, if that's the right word. In other words, you have over the years, obviously, you are Hollywood. You have been in it and still are, and you have the shop and all the rest of it. But the huge number of friends and composers and arrangers that you know, and their willingness to comply with your needs, which is to compose pieces for you, and their excitement about it. It's just an amazing. So we're going to start with this CD again. This one is a real recital, a clarinet recital. You do not run through the whole gamut of instruments. It's simply an A clarinet at one point, a B flat clarinet, but you make use of your friends in Hollywood composition, Hollywood composers, and you discovered a composer I've never heard of, the French composer we're going to discuss. Beautiful, beautiful sonata. So it's quite an album. But let's begin. Mike, can you give me a little overview about how A Whisper, a Sigh, a Dream began? Because you do have a very significant partner in this CD.
Right. Well, Mark Gasparo, who is the composer of A Whisper, a Sigh, a Dream, and the recordist, and the mixer, and the piano player, and everything is a friend of his did the cover. Very integral part of the whole thing. But A Whisper, a Sigh, a Dream, he wrote for violin and piano, and the violinist played it, and it just kind of got put on the shelf. And I said, "Write me something." He says, "Well, I don't have anything really except for, well, there's this violin piece." He said, "I don't know whether it worked for clarinet or not, but it just laid perfectly on the clarinet." Yeah. So that was it. That was the start of it. And it was a thing where, I wanted to do an album, and we just started getting together and rehearsing and seeing, what we were going to do. And I don't know, it took us maybe a year. And he lives a long ways away in LA. It's 2 hours to get anywhere. It was about 2 hours to his house, and I go out there because he had a piano and I didn't, and it was good every time,
By the way, that's the life in LA, driving 2 hours just to get from one end of town to another.
Yeah, right. 2 hours to get to work.
It is a gigantic city, there's no doubt about it. And this brings up another thing that really impressed me on this CD and on your earlier CD, and I still owe you a CD coming up, and I'll be looking at that in a bit. But and all the many composers, Hollywood composers that I'm now talking with that are putting out CDs, this real need, and I realize now that it really is a need of Hollywood composers to really, they really still want to dip into some serious works. So, we
have what we do for a living, and we have what we what we wanted to do when we started in the business. And for me, the only way to play with great players was to be in the business. I really didn't care about that, but if you're not in the business, you don't play with as good of players.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why I got in the business. But there's no real music, quote unquote, in the business. So everybody, composers, musicians, we want to play real music. So we find these little outlets. It doesn't pay anything.
That's
but
right.
there's this music. That's why we were charmed when we were. So at some point, it charmed us, and we have no choice but to do it.
I hear this over and over again, and again, it's not even judgmental, at all. It's just that I'm really fascinated because I hear this over and over again. Composers in Hollywood making money, they're doing their thing, they're chasing. It's hard work, that. It's all of that business stuff, and they just are hankering to show their PhD degree recital they wrote to get their degree and so on, and also just the idea that these people just don't come off the streets. These Hollywood musicians, these people have major and advanced degrees. They have been through composition. We have the West Coast version of Juilliard in Los Angeles. That's just really hit home with this album. Let's talk about some of these composers. And I guess we've already mentioned Mark, who also you very graciously give him a wonderful opportunity with a beautiful Debussy piece, one of the preludes. And once again, I'm knocked out by the level of musicianship in Los Angeles. This is a concert pianist, Mark, as he proves very easily with the
jazz pianist. He's on my new pop album. It's a jazz pianist.
Here we go. It's this Gunther. I'm sounding like a broken record, but this Gunther Schuller third stream. Now, I've been a hardcore classicist all my life, as in very much poo-pooed this whole bit about jazz and classical music somehow melding together. All I see and hear now, especially from the young musicians in their 20s and 30s who are moving up into the business, if you will, is this capability to improvise freely, to riff at will, and then they sit down and play a Chopin concerto with the Burbank Philharmonic or something. I mean, unbelievable. So how about Tim Simonek, or did you have something to say there?
Yeah, well, I did. It's changed from when we were young. I mean, I remember when I was young, talking about 5 or 6 years old, there was 3 television stations and maybe 6 radio stations. Now you can hear classical music anywhere. You can hear jazz anywhere. Internet, television, radio. I mean, everybody has, so you can formulate a concept where before the concept was the concert band, the symphony orchestra, chamber music. That was it. Or Perry Como. Right? And Perry Como was a great singer.
And by the way, they never mixed. Once upon a time, you never mixed. You never affiliated with.
But now, I mean, kids are learning harmony in junior high school. I never learned harmony. I just faked it, until it worked. I kept playing wrong notes, and then finally they were right notes,
That's also a secret about improvisation anyway.
It is.
It's all wrong for a while, and then as your mind and your aesthetic, I guess, kind of begins to hear. I mentioned a couple nights ago in another interview that for me, Leonard Bernstein's symphonies, when I was a kid in junior high listening to them, I was like Schoenberg or something. I mean, I just could not figure it out. Now it's like Mozart. These are beautiful symphonies of Bernstein. And so this whole thing about growing the mind, growing the intellect, growing the skills, and that is this third stream idea. So much talent. Let's just try and focus a little bit on these composers that you have known and worked with that are on this incredible CD. I started mentioning Tim Simonek. Thank you. Give us a little overview of this guy. Another Hollywood composer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He did many Pixar movies. He worked in that genre for quite a while.
Give us a title or two. I read them earlier, and when I picked my job off the floor, we're not.
Ratatouille, Up, Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, there you go. That's the one that blew my brains out. So we're not talking about I'm trying not to be insulting, but we're not talking about ordinary. We're talking about extraordinary.
Yeah.
composers, all of them on this CD. What's the piece? Let's see. I kind of lost my notes. Oh, this Four Seasons, No Strings Attached is the piece that that he wrote for you. Have I got that right? He wrote it for you, or was it?
He wrote it for me. Yeah. I asked him to do it. He did it.
Well,
first thing is it's mislabeled on the CD, and I don't know which one's right. You probably know the other Four Seasons, not my Four Seasons. But this is summer, winter, fall, and spring, and then I think on the record it says something else. And I don't know what the order is because I didn't pay attention to the original one.
By the way, I'm glad that I didn't pay attention either, because the truth is it doesn't matter one little bit.
No, but you know, I mean, the style of the music, you know, kind of tells you, I guess. But anyway, it's mislabeled. So.
It's amazing, and it's also very American.
Very American.
And I want to throw something at you about your playing. Remember, we're talking here. I'm talking to a man who plays everything in the woodwinds. He is a woodwind master. All these years in Hollywood and so on. I love the style of your playing. The way you can change moods, and it's just so expert. Which explains your career, as in, you know, you're asked to play this way or that way or the other way. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I mean, if I was playing with a symphony orchestra, I would probably play a lot more refined. No, I don't. Refined's not the right word because I'm refined.
Yes, you are.
But I mean, more rigid, because there is still a concept, and like you say, that you know, there's the L.A. Juilliard, and there's Juilliard, and there's all these places, and they're putting out clarinet clones. I mean, the day they graduate, they can go sit in a symphony orchestra because they know the literature. They play exactly like the guy that plays it. And, you know, I'm just not that way. You know, it doesn't interest me just to play that way. You know, but the kids that are graduating now are amazing, you know, but they play that way, the certain way that you can't interpret it too much because it's set. You know, Beethoven is always done like Beethoven.
Yeah.
You know, Mozart, you can't. You know, Mozart you can see through. You can't change a thing in Mozart. You know, you can't do it. You know.
But as far as these young players, boy, we sound like a couple of old cronies sitting around our beers, pouting in our beers. But about these really brilliant young musicians coming up in their 20s and 30s, I see them all the time at the Music Academy of the West, is that they so easily now transfer from genre to genre with increased skill, and also a little slapping around over the years as their career goes on. They'll shape up and open up and all the rest of it.
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely.
I have every faith in that. I want to talk. So we've mentioned Tim's piece, Four Seasons, No Strings Attached, which by the way is very interesting. There's no fun. There's no fooling around here. That's beautiful.
It was a very difficult piece because he does a lot of like 7 against 5, things like that, and we really had to like learn how to not read it, but just kind of feel what he had in mind. And he was very happy with it when we got done. But it really was a journey learning it, you know, and it was a good journey. You know?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And now talk about again. I mentioned earlier that you just continue to amaze me. I just had no idea what I was getting into with this CD, just as with Journeyman. Here is a French composer you found, French, I guess, Alsace-Lorraine, basic on the last name, Charles Kepl. How do you? Kepl, a Germanic last name, and Charles, French first name. A musician, right up there with Fauré and the others in the French, that French late Romantic school.
A piece called The Jungle Book. That was his famous piece.
Yeah, you mentioned that, which I've never heard.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd never heard any of this stuff by this man. Amazing. Anyway, this is a solo clarinet piece. It's an A, is it? A clarinet? I can't.
A clarinet.
Yeah. Beautiful, by the way. Just the subtle difference between B flat and A clarinet. The timbre is so interesting. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you about, first of all, amazing, late 19th century, but here's my question. The way you play this piece, this solo clarinet piece that every clarinetist who needs a wonderful piece for a program should be running out and buying immediately, it's so free. I wanted to ask you, it's almost improvisatory. How did you approach that piece, and how does it look on the page compared to how you realized it?
It looks kind of like I played it. You know, the way I came across him was I was studying flute with Luella Howard, and she was a long time with the LA Phil, and then when they still had studio orchestra, she was at 20th Century Fox. She turned me on to him because there's this piece by him. It's called 12 Pieces for Flute and Piano, and each piece covers a problem on the flute. You know, so if you can play all 12 pieces, you mastered a lot of the problems on the flute. So that's how I ran across him. And like when you do a CD, you're looking, through all the catalogs, and you're looking online. And I saw his name with the solo clarinet piece. I said, well, I gotta buy it, just see what it is. And I played it. And I thought, well, that's nice. That'd be a nice, little rest piece without piano.
Yeah, well, yes, actually, exactly on this CD. And again, I have the conversation all the time. We don't need to particularly go there, but I just want to remind everybody that's out there the tremendous process to put together a CD, the time involved, the hours, the research, all the rest of it, let alone the money, the cost. all the rest of that. So it's quite an achievement for anybody and everybody that I've interviewed so far about achieving a CD. It's really something. You don't just dash them off in the back of the room.
And I have to compliment you too. I mean, what you're doing. I've seen a lot of the interviews in the written and on the video, and there's so many of us out there that are qualified. And we don't have the money to take a $200,000 ad out in Billboard when the Grammys come around, but you'll talk to us, and I think it's great because all the people on your list are great, and I appreciate it.
Well, the compliment goes both ways because I have met the most incredible people, yourself included, and it has just, my eyes have been opened wider than I thought they were, even about talent and art and creativity and composition. I'm the right guy because I'm wide open to everything that gets thrown at me. You know what I mean? Even esoteric music, I'm fascinated by. So anyway, thanks for the compliment. But let's now here's another one just to give everybody an idea of how superb. I'm not kidding. I use the word maybe too much, I suppose, but that's what I've encountered with all of you. The superb choice again of music, and I'm thinking of just now, and maybe you'll touch on it a bit. This Astor Piazzolla tango piece, and you see it on the printed page, and I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be another tango, clarinet, piano. It was the most amazing. It's called Oblivion.
Right.
And tell us how come you and Mark settled on this piece. It's in the program notes, but it's a beautiful story.
I'm not quite sure. I don't remember, but I do remember that we played it off a lead sheet. It was just melody and chords. And being that it was a classical CD, we kind of tried to make it, folk music, but classical folk music. Now, I did it again on my next record, which was called Latin Love. And it was a jazz record. It's completely different.
By the way, that's the next one up, I think. That's the third CD that I'll be looking at. And
yeah, well, we did it on both CDs, and it's like a completely different, version of it. And I like the tune. I might do it on every CD from now on. I don't know.
Let's see. I'm just running through my notes here. The way, and you do this a lot, you did it on the earlier recording, we've already mentioned how you support your colleagues, you support your composer arranger colleagues in Hollywood, and you give them work for you to do. But Nino Rota, the Italian film composer, famous, I suppose, and I remember all the Fellini films, but I was too dazzled by the visuals to remember the music much. But Nino Rota, Italian film composer, who's really, aside from maybe the films, heard of him, and on your CD, on this CD, I'm going to do it again, a whisper, a sigh, a dream. On this CD, a fabulous sonata.
It sounds like Brahms, I think.
It's gorgeous, and you mentioned that you were kind of
Authentic, you know.
yeah, and you tell us that story about how you and Mark were looking for something to do, and then you thought about Brahms. Go ahead, give us that.
Oh, I don't know if we were thinking about Brahms or not. I think it's just one of those, you know. I used to go in there with stacks of music. I mean, and we just sight read through them till we found something we liked. And we're like, as soon as we heard this, we both liked it,
Yeah.
you know. And I mean, it's crafted so well, you know. I mean, it's really, really good writing.
Beautiful for the instrument. It's also kind of late. If I guess what I'm going to use the word accessible, and then I'm going to explain what I mean by accessible because it is so overused. It's not This CD is very accessible, and it's accessible not because it's easy on the mind or on the intellect. No, not at all. It's accessible because this music that you have chosen needs to be heard. I mean, it's brilliant stuff. That's why again I was just blown away by your selections and so all of these composers. I'm thinking now of a Hollywood composer. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Victor Vacarro.
Yeah.
Another, he's I think has passed, hasn't he? But did you know him in the 70s? Sorry, Victor.
Actually, he got a Grammy Award for Ray Charles' very last album. He got it as best arranger.
Amazing. Was this what's the title of that piece of Victor's piece on the CD? I'm just trying to find. Let me have a peek too here.
It's called Neapolitan Suite, I think.
That's right, and it's charming, really charming.
What he did is he's Calabrian, so he wrote like 40 little Calabrian pieces. And when I said, I need something to finish the CD, he said, I don't know what to write. I said, well, take one of those Calabrian pieces, So he took 3 of them, and he just made this little suite, and it's charming.
Tell us a little bit about Calabrian music.
Well, that's in the middle of Italy, Calabria, and that's where his family's from, Sorrento and Naples and around there.
So there are those folk elements.
They're this style of folk music, of songs, and he just, because that's who he was, he just wrote a bunch of them, and that's what we ended up doing.
And also, let me just speak again to what I mentioned earlier. Because of your career, the way you can change color, the way you can change mood, the way you can improvise, all of that is so evident on this CD and so colorful. I don't know if I used the word yet, but everything is so colorful, and it's just the style of being a studio musician. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you come in, something's thrown at you, you have 20 minutes to make it right and play it once, and there are suggestions, in the style of or this or that or the other thing, and boom, out it pops. Tell us about that a little bit. I mean, it's true, right?
It's just being exposed to a lot of different things. The more things you're exposed to. I mean, I tell my students, it's like a literature teacher that doesn't read books. You got to read books. You got to listen to music. If you want to be a musician, you can't be a musician until you know how you want to sound. And most musicians sound like somebody else before they sound like themselves. They find somebody, they go, oh, well, that's it, And then they try and emulate that, and that goes till you're about 20, and then you think, oh, well, maybe I should be myself,
Yeah, indeed. I don't want to waste our interview time, but after we're done here, I'll tell you an anecdote this very day that liberated me from myself.
Great.
From an incident that happened years and years ago. Everybody said I was totally wrong. They were totally wrong. I found out today. Anyway, and it's not about who wins and who loses. It's just, experience and seeing and understanding subtext and all the rest of it. So let's see. We've been kind of winging it, and we're, I guess, about done. What have I forgotten? I'm a little lost in my notes here. We had so much trouble getting
I don't know that we've forgotten anything, but I think I'm happy with the, finish a CD. There's CDs that you can listen to the following week, and there's CDs you can't listen to for 6 months because, you're not sure how you feel about them, or you may not like them or something. Most of my CDs I can listen to right afterwards, and I think it's because I pick things that are accessible, and we learn them well enough that it sounds like we really know them. But we do. We
Yeah, of
don't.
course you do. Yeah.
But it takes a lot of work. I'm working on a piece now for a new record from a film composer named John Scott, and he wrote me a piece for clarinet and string quartet. I've been practicing it for 2.5 years. I mean, every day, and I'm just starting to feel like I could play it almost every time. That's how
Wow.
this piece is. But it's beautiful. It's unbelievable writing. And that would be the next CD. That we'll review that in a year.
Okay, you gave me a good segue, because one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and there are a couple of other actually I'm seeing it more and more the more experience I gain in speaking with artists who are putting out CDs. This need to crank out those CDs, to keep putting them out. What is that? Is that a legacy? Is it what? How many CDs have you put out so far? 7 or 8?
I think 6 or 7. I'm not sure which.
Yeah.
But it's turned out to be a hobby because it doesn't pay.
Yeah, that's right. But
it's
more. There's more there. Come on. Come on, man. There's more though. There's more to it, surely.
There is more to it, and I think it is about having a legacy. And I think it's you work so hard to sound good, you want people to know that you sound good.
And by the way, that gives me another one. This CD that I hope we're going to help the world. Those, as you say, we're not going to get rich on this, but perk the ears of a few people out there, especially clarinetists. I was a clarinetist. I've hidden that fact for.
I always kind of hesitant to send it to you, but I did anyway.
I'm glad you did it. My attitude is slowly improving about things. No, it was Richard Stoltzman at California Institute of the Arts. When he said, we're now going to make reeds, that's when I said, I better be a conductor instead. Anyway, but this CD of yours, again, a whisper, a sigh, a dream. Get it in your heads, folks. And then I'm going to, you go to performingartsreview.net and look up Mike's page. I'm going to link your earlier CD and this CD, link the pages, so people can go and explore and give a listen and so on. But this CD was produced in 2013.
Right.
And with all that craze that we've spoken about, where everybody's cranking out the CDs, it's a good thing. It sounds like I'm being obstructionist or something, but it's a good thing. But the amazing thing that I've run into is that people will say to me, "Oh, well, I made that CD in, let's say, 2013. It's old hat. It's gone. It's lost forever." And it's sort of like saying, "Well, I wrote Moby Dick in 1834. It's now 1878. It's just no good. It's passé. It's gone." So I'm trying to get people to understand that what we have, and what I'm discovering now that I'm, approaching musicians and reviewing so many CDs, this all over the world, this is an enormous wealth of recorded music. So your 2013 CD that we've just been talking about is absolutely pure and perfect and in need of being listened to this moment as it was when you first produced it. And that goes for everybody that puts out this kind of energy and effort and to create a CD. They're all masterpieces. I mean, I haven't run into a problem with anybody yet. So,
and I appreciate that, and I appreciate it for everybody that you've reviewed, because we all appreciate having you. I just want to say something. I don't know how close to the end we are, but I have a new record company. It's called ADC Recordings, which means adcrecordings.com, and all my records are there now too. They can buy them there, or of course. I don't know, CD Baby, those places you can get.
All over the place. And again, I'm going to put that's part of my duty, I think, is to make sure people can click and buy. And again, we're not trying to make sales records. We're not going to do that. But I'm imploring, really, musicians out there. Again, clarinetists, pay attention. This CD has some gems on it, real repertoire gems for recital programs. Well, I'm exhausted. We had quite a hard time getting set up here. It just goes with the territory. But I'm so glad to see you again, Mike. Do I dare ask? You hint at all kinds of other stuff in the future. When are you going to run out and run down? When are you going to board it?
I've got 2 saxophone quartets to record, the clarinet quintet. I play with the clarinet quartet. We're one song away from finishing our CD. And, that's what I do now.
Nice. And what I do now is review. I haven't flapped my hands as a conductor in a little while, so I mean, I'm just thrilled again to meet all of you, yourself included. So I guess we're done. We're right at about 30 minutes. It's perfect. I've told you about 4 times. I love your coat, and I'll be seeing you well in a few weeks. I think I made that promise about a year ago when we got started on this journey, but I'm doing the best I can to get caught up and give everybody some good coverage. So great pleasure, Mike Vacarro.
Thanks for having me.
Again, master woodwind musician.
Thank you.
Beautiful CDs you have put together and continue to put together. Great pleasure.
Appreciate it.
We will see you next time. Okay. Bye.